he returned with silence. After years adrift among the cold, silent currents of space, the astronaut, Elias Thorne, returned to a world that had forgotten the quieto. His vessel, a silver scar against the sapphire sky, descended with a whisper, and from its belly he emerged not with tales of distant nebulae or the shimmer of alien suns, but with a simple frosted glass jar. Within it, he claimed, was something rarer than stardust, more profound than any black hole, pure silence. It was not the mere absence of sound, he would explain, with a gentle, far-away look in his eyes, a gaze that seemed to hold the vast emptiness and quiet majesty of the cosmos itself, but a living, breathing stillness, a profound calm that promised to soothe the relentless storms within the human heart. This was not the oppressive silence of a void, but a rich, resonant quietude, pulsating with an unseen energy, capable of absorbing the cacophony of modern existence and transforming it into a serene inner landscape. Earth, in his absence, had grown impossibly loud, a cacophony of constant chatter, the incessant grating hum of technology, the clamor of ambition that echoed through concrete canyons, the frantic, almost hysterical pulse of fear that permeated every broadcast and digital interaction. It had all woven into a deafening, suffocating tapestry that left souls frayed, nerves jangled, and minds perpetually restless. People lived in a perpetual state of being overwhelmed, their senses assaulted from every direction. Their inner landscapes, once fertile grounds for contemplation and introspection, now mirrored the chaotic roar of their external world, barren and parched. Elias saw it everywhere in their hurried glances, darting nervously from screen to screen, their shoulders, hunched and tense, bearing invisible burdens, the anxious tremor in their voices, a constant undercurrent of unease. He saw it in the way they clutched their devices, desperate for distraction, for any morsel of digital noise to fill the aching void that clamored within them, unaware that the very act of filling was only deepening the emptiness. He did not announce his return with fanfare, nor did he seek applause or recognition for his extraordinary journey. He simply existed, a quiet, almost spectral anchor in a tumultuous sea of sound and hurried motion. The jar of silence, held with a reverence that bespoke its immense, almost sacred value, became an enigma, then a whispered curiosity, and finally a pilgrimage site drawing souls from far and wide. Neighbors, initially skeptical, their faces creased with doubt, and their ears accustomed to the thrum of urban life, felt an inexplicable, undeniable pull towards his small, unassuming home. Strangers, hearing whispers and rumors carried on the wind like ancient myths, traveled from distant cities and remote villages, their faces etched with a profound longing. They couldn't articulate, a yearning for something they didn't even know they lacked. Lovers, tangled in the complexities of unspoken words and simmering resentments, came hand in hand, their connection frayed, desperate for a respite, a moment of clarity that the world outside simply refused to grant. Each person who approached the jar found themselves drawn into its quiet embrace, a magnetic force that tugged at their deepest anxieties. At the very core of their being, they would sit or stand or simply exist in its almost palpable presence, and gradually, subtly, imperceptibly at first, the world outside began to fade. The incessant noise in their minds, the anxious loops of thought that spun endlessly, the echoes of yesterday's arguments and tomorrow's worries, all of it softened, then hushed like a storm receding into the horizon. It was like watching a turbulent, muddy lake slowly become still and clear, its surface no longer agitated, but perfectly reflecting the vast, clear, infinite sky above. For some, it manifested as a profound sense of peace, a quiet joy that resonated from deep within their very essence. The constant striving, the endless, exhausting pursuit of more, of status, of material possessions, loosened its relentless grip. They found themselves breathing deeper, fuller breaths, their shoulders relaxing from their perpetual tension, their eyes softening with a newfound gentleness. They saw the wrinkles on their loved ones' faces, not as mere signs of age or passing time, but as intricate maps of shared laughter, quiet comfort, and poignant tears, each line telling a story. They heard the subtle chirping of crickets, the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze, sounds long, drowned out and forgotten amidst the roaring tide of modern life, now rediscovered and cherished as precious melodies. For others it was a balm for old, festering wounds. A young woman, burdened by a childhood trauma that had shaped her entire life, felt the tight, suffocating knot in her stomach slowly, agonizingly unravel. The silence didn't offer immediate answers or quick fixes, but it created a sacred, protected space where the pain could simply exist, acknowledged without judgment, observed without amplification, and then, gradually, tenderly, released like breath leaving the body. A man consumed by grief, his world shattered by an unbearable loss, found that the silence allowed him to remember the profound love, not just the piercing agony of the loss. It wasn't about forgetting the person or the pain, but about finding a new, gentler way to carry the memories, tenderly, without their sharp, cutting edges tearing at his soul. Each person, without exception, found a piece of themselves in its quiet embrace, not a piece they had consciously lost or misplaced, but a piece they had never truly known or acknowledged, the quiet, resilient core of their being, the untouched essence of their spirit, impervious to the world's ceaseless demands and fleeting trends. It was a mirror that reflected their true, unadulterated essence, unburdened by societal expectations, familial projections, or self-imposed limitations. In the profound, humbling stillness, they met their own hearts, often for the very first time, seeing them not as frail, vulnerable organs, but as pulsating centers of strength, compassion, and boundless potential. Yet, as the silence began to work its subtle, transformative magic, changing them from the inside out, weaving itself into the very fabric of their existence, they realized it held a truth no one had expected. It was a truth that whispered, rather than shouted, a revelation that unfolded slowly, gently, like a forgotten memory, resurfacing from the deep, undisturbed waters of consciousness. A truth that resonated not in the mind, but in the very depths of their being, reshaping their understanding of communication and connection. They discovered that the silence was not just about calming the mind or healing the heart. It was about communication, about understanding in its purest form. In a world obsessed with speaking, with filling every empty space, with words, with proclaiming opinions and asserting dominance, they had forgotten the immense, often overlooked power of what remained unsaid. They had forgotten how to listen, truly listen, not just with their ears, but with their entire being, to the unspoken language of the soul, to the subtle currents of emotion and intention that flowed beneath the surface of conversation. Sometimes what we don't say is what saves us. It was a startling, profound realization, a paradigm shift in their approach to life. The words they had held back, the arguments they had refrained from escalating, the judgments they had kept to themselves, the fears they had quietly carried, these were not weaknesses or failures of expression, but often profound strengths, acts of self-control and compassion. The silence allowed them to discern with clarity which words needed to be spoken, which could bring healing and understanding, and which were best left unheard as they would only cause harm or misunderstanding. It taught them to choose their words with intention, with wisdom to understand that not every fleeting thought or impulse required immediate, unfiltered utterance. In the quiet space fostered by Elias's jar, they learned to read the nuances of a glance, the subtle shift in posture, the unspoken emotion in a sigh, a tremor of the hand, a slight hesitation in movement. They understood that true connection often transcended the limitations of spoken language, that empathy resided, not in perfectly articulated phrases, but in the silent acknowledgement of another's pain or joy or fear, in simply being present with them. They learned that sometimes the most profound acts of love or forgiveness or understanding were conveyed without a single syllable through a shared breath, a knowing look, or a gentle, comforting touch. Elias Thorne, the silent astronaut, watched these miraculous transformations with a knowing, almost serene gaze. He had not brought back a miracle cure nor a magical elixir, but a forgotten wisdom, a fundamental truth that humanity had lost amidst its frantic pursuit of progress and noise. The jar of silence, he knew, was merely a vessel, a tangible catalyst, a symbolic reminder. The true silence, the one that healed and saved, the one that connected them to themselves and to each other, had always resided within each of them, buried deep beneath layers of societal noise, digital distraction, and self-imposed limitations. He had merely provided a gentle reminder, a quiet invitation to rediscover what they already possessed. As the world slowly began to quiet, as people reconnected with their intrinsic inner stillness, a new kind of harmony emerged, a resonance that echoed through communities and across continents. Conversations became more meaningful, imbued with genuine presence. Relationships deepened, built on unspoken understanding and mutual respect and empathy, became a common, cherished currency, flowing freely between individuals. The loud, chaotic world began to soften, not by force or decree, but by the gentle, insistent power of its own rediscovered silence. And in that profound, beautiful stillness, humanity found not an absence of sound or life, but a profound presence, a limitless reservoir of peace and wisdom, a quiet truth that had been waiting patiently for eons to be heard, to be embraced, to transform everything. They learned that true strength wasn't in the loudest voice, but in the deepest listening, in the capacity to absorb and understand without immediate reaction. That true understanding wasn't in elaborate explanations or eloquent arguments, but in shared moments of quiet comprehension, in the space where words were no longer needed. That sometimes the most powerful stories are told not with words, but in the profound resonant space between them, in the silent language of shared experience and empathy. And in that space, in the quiet embrace of what remained unsaid, in the profound, healing stillness of their own awakened hearts, they found their salvation, a peace that transcended all understanding, a silence that spoke volumes.